My daughter went on a run this morning, and she's been gone a lot longer than I expected.
And what's your name, please, sir?
Bob Smither.
My name is Kelli Ann Cox. I have been abducted, raped, murdered, dumped, and buried.
When the abductor of a young woman was sentenced to 60 years in prison, everyone breathed a sigh of relief that at least that predator was now off the street, unable to harm anyone. But secrets of his sickening deeds had not yet begun to unravel. Secrets that would eventually unmask a sadistic serial killer. Who was this man? And what other sinister crimes had he committed? Hi, and welcome back to Mysterious 7. I'm Michael, and today we're digging deep into the case of William Reece. But first, almost 93% of you are still not subscribed to the channel. Please consider subscribing and liking this video. It really motivates us to create more intriguing content for you. So without further ado, let's dive right into this mystery. On May 16, 1997, 19-year-old Sandra Sapaugh stopped her car at a gas station in Webster, Texas to use a payphone. After using the phone, she came back to her car and began to drive, only to find out a few minutes later that she had a flat tire and was forced to stop again. She was pondering what to do when a man trailing behind her in a white truck stopped and offered to help her. The man seemed like a good Samaritan, and Sandra did not think twice before getting into his truck. Yet inside the truck, the man overpowered her and bound her wrists before continuing to drive along Interstate 45. Scared to death at this point, Sandra found that the door of the truck was unlocked. Although she was pregnant, in a desperate attempt to get away from the attacker, she managed to break free from the restraints and jumped out of the truck, but he grabbed a hold of her. She was dragged several miles on the pavement. She eventually managed to get away, but sustained severe injuries in the process. She was taken to a nearby hospital where police were contacted. She gave a description of her attacker, but due to her traumatized state, she could not recall important details. It was not enough to apprehend the predator. Having no other clues to the identity of the attacker, detectives decided to put Sandra under hypnosis a few months later. Under hypnosis, she remembered key details, including the license plate number of the truck. The license plate number led to a man named William Reece. William Lewis Reece was born on July 1, 1959 in Oklahoma. He was one of 13 siblings. When he was young, he lived in the cities of Yukon and Anadarko. Due to his parents' poor financial condition, he was forced to quit school in the 9th grade and take on a job as a farm laborer. In 1979, he married his first wife, Judy Flaming, after she became pregnant. After their marriage, Reece enlisted in the Oklahoma National Guard, but left after some time. Meanwhile, his marriage was experiencing some turbulence, and just a year into their marriage, Judy divorced him. Reece convinced her to remarry him, and the couple had a second child shortly afterward. But the marriage again did not last long, as Reece began drinking heavily and became physically abusive to Judy. In 1982, Judy filed a complaint to the police after a beating and said that her husband had threatened to kill her with a knife and a shotgun. Once again, she divorced him. Reece remarried, but his second wife also divorced him a few months into their marriage. It was not long after that Reece started his crime spree. In April 1986, Reece kidnapped the 19-year-old daughter of a Texas sheriff's deputy. The woman was driving to a local gym when her car got stuck. Reece, who worked as a truck driver at the time, lured her into his truck, promising to take her to the nearest payphone. Once inside the vehicle, he sexually assaulted her after tying her up. Reece then drove the victim to a nearby motel where he rented a room for the night. When he allowed her to use the bathroom, she took the opportunity to escape and call the police. Reece was arrested and charged, but was released from custody after paying his bail. A month after his release, while out on bond, he sexually assaulted another woman and was arrested again. He was put on trial for both rapes, found guilty, and sentenced to 25 years imprisonment. However, he appealed the conviction to a criminal court, which granted a review of his case. The review suggested that there were procedural errors in Reece's criminal case, causing his sentence to be reduced and leading to his parole in October 1996 after serving just 9.5 years. After his release from prison, Reece moved into his mother's home in Anadarko, Oklahoma. Then, in early 1997, he regained his driver's license and moved to Houston, Texas. That's where he attempted to abduct and sexually assault Sandra Sapaugh in the summer of 1997. In 1998, Reece was convicted of aggravated kidnapping and sentenced to 60 years imprisonment. But as he was serving his prison time, detectives suspected his involvement in more crimes. It would take years to unravel the secrets William Reece took with him to prison, while several families sat waiting for answers. On the drizzling morning of April 3, 1997, around 9 a.m., 12-year-old Laura Smither asked for permission from her mother to go for a jog alone. Her mother never imagined that allowing her to go out for a run was a decision that would come back to haunt her for the rest of her life. Born to Bob and Gay Smither, Laura grew up in a nice home in Friendswood alongside her younger brother. She was known to have a kind and sweet nature. From a young age, Laura was a bright student and a gifted ballet dancer. Her dreams of becoming a ballerina were just starting to become realized, as she'd been accepted into the Houston Ballet Academy just a few days prior to this incident. When she asked to go jogging that fateful day, it came as a surprise for her mother, as Laura never went out much. In fact, she did not even go to school and was being homeschooled by her parents. However, Laura was recently inspired to do cardio to improve her dance skills and wanted to go for a run. While making breakfast, her mother allowed her to go for a short jog, as it never occurred to her that something evil was waiting for the little girl in the shadows. When Laura did not come back after a few hours, her parents began to panic. As Laura was always under their supervision and had never been out alone for too long, they knew something was wrong. Laura's father went to look around the neighborhood, but there were no signs of her.
I also thought, oh well, she won't be out there very long, and then she didn't come back. We knew something was wrong.
They also called relatives as well as Laura's friends to see if anyone knew of her whereabouts, but to no avail. Unable to find her anywhere, Laura's parents called the police to file a missing persons report.
My daughter went on a run this morning, and she's been gone a lot longer than I expected.
And what's your name, please, sir?
Bob Smither.
As police were starting their investigation, people from the community joined Laura's family to help in the search. With Laura's pictures in hand, they asked everyone in the area if they had any information about the missing girl, but the search had to stop as the light faded and darkness took over the day. By the next morning, police were actively searching for the little girl. While a group of cops were searching through the woods on foot, helicopters were also scouring for any clues, but none were found. The results did not deter the spirits of the community, as hundreds of volunteers joined Laura's family to search for the 12-year-old. Consisting of 6,000 volunteers, the search campaign lasted for a week. Law enforcement was searching just as diligently. The National Coast Guard, along with the FBI, also joined the local police department to assist with the search. Although initially the possibility of Laura getting lost in the woods was considered, by this time in the investigation, police were considering foul play. In hopes of keeping the search alive, the community held candlelight rallies and vigils in Laura's name. Another week passed without any progress in the case. Then, on Sunday, April 20th, 1997, while the community gathered inside the Friendswood High School to discuss further steps to find Laura, the police chief got a phone call. Looking at his anxious face, people in the meeting feared the worst, but did not know what had happened. Around 10 p.m., Laura's parents were told about the gruesome discovery. Earlier that day, a man was walking with his dog when the dog discovered a badly decomposing body of a young girl in a muddy area near a retention pond in Pasadena, just 12 miles away from where Laura went missing. Besides a pair of socks, the girl was wearing no clothing. Right away, police speculated it was Laura's body, and the autopsy later confirmed this. 17 days after her disappearance, Laura was finally found, but in a way that nobody would have ever wanted. She had been brutally beaten and strangled to death. The entire Friendswood area was shocked and heartbroken at this little girl's untimely demise. But sadness was not the only feeling they had. There was tremendous fear. Fear that a predator was loose, looking for other prey. Police were determined to catch the monster before he could harm another innocent soul, but they had no leads as to who committed this atrocious act. Desperate to gather clues, police began questioning sex offenders around the area. Pretty soon, William Reece was on their radar. 38-year-old Reece was working in Windsor Estate in Friendswood at the time as an equipment operator. Strangely, on the day that Laura went missing, he left work around the same time of Laura's disappearance and came back 30 minutes later. But even after an intense investigation, police found no solid evidence to link him to the crime. Therefore, the case remained unsolved for years.
And I know that that was one thing she had always said.
Alexis?
And it brought some new hope to EquiSearch organization. Even after 19 years, it's possible that we can.
On July 15, 1997, 20-year-old Kelli Cox took a required field trip to a local Denton jail with her fellow classmates for their criminology class. She left her car at the parking lot across from the police station and hid a spare key in a hide-a-key magnetic box hidden underneath her car. She then locked the rest of her belongings, including her cell phone, in the car per her professor's instructions. After that, she took the tour of the jail, but left quickly once it finished at noon. She had a test to take at the University of North Texas campus where she studied. Oddly, her spare key wouldn't open her car door when she tried to leave, even though she checked the key the previous night. Unable to use her cell phone, Kelli walked across the street to a gas station and used a payphone to call her boyfriend, Lawrence Harris III, for help. She then went inside, bought a drink, and was never seen alive again. When Lawrence arrived there about 45 minutes later, Kelli's car was still in the parking lot, but she was nowhere to be found. The key box and the key were not found either. After looking for Kelli for some time, Lawrence called Kelli's mother to see if she'd made it home, but she hadn't. Although the incident was already suspicious, Kelli's family decided to wait for a while to see if she'd return. However, by 5:30 p.m. that afternoon, they were certain that something was wrong. Kelli was supposed to pick up her 19-month-old daughter, Alexis, from the babysitter's house at 5:30, which she failed to do. Her family knew that the responsible mother that Kelli was, even at her young age, she would never have neglected to pick up Alexis, or at least make some arrangements for her to be picked up if she couldn't. Investigators immediately began to search for the young mother as soon as the missing persons report was filed. As in most missing persons cases, police began to look closely at the people who were closest to her. They began with her boyfriend Lawrence, but he was ruled out as a suspect after he passed 4 polygraph tests. Then a tip led them to another suspect, William Reece, the same Reece who had been a suspect in Laura Smithers' case. Although Reece did not live in Denton at the time, a receipt from a gas station placed Reece at Denton on the same day Kelli vanished. Being a sex offender, Reece was a priority suspect in Kelli's disappearance, and police searched his car for Kelli's fingerprints. When no fingerprints were found in his car, police had nothing to further link him to the disappearance. With no leads, no witnesses, and no surveillance footage, the case quickly went cold and remained so for many ensuing years. Kelli's disappearance was hard for her mother and stepdad, as they had to raise Alexis on their own. As years passed, Kelli never came back to her daughter, but following her mother's footsteps, Alexis went on to study in the same university as Laura had, holding on to the hope that her mother would come back one day.
I know a lot of times I find myself going, Kelli, you would be so proud of Alexis.
In all those years, Kelli's family never lost hope of her coming back, never stopped sharing her story, and never stopped putting her picture out there. Sadly, their wish never came true. Kelli never made it home. In the early morning hours of August 17, 1997, 17-year-old Jessica Cain's mother woke up to find her daughter did not come home from a theater party the night before. Born on August 28, 1979, Jessica was the light of her parents, C.H. and Susie Cain's, lives. Growing up, she was known as a funny, bubbly, and delightful person who put her creativity into her words. Jessica had a love for sports and was the captain of the drill team at O'Connell High School in Galveston, Texas. But apart from that, she focused all her time in the drama field, where she participated in many plays. On August 16, 1997, Jessica was enjoying her evening with friends after performing in a musical review in Dickinson and attending a cast party at the Bennigans on Bay Avenue Boulevard. From there, she did not come back home. In a panic, Jessica's mother woke her father up and began calling Jessica. Unable to reach her, they called several of her friends who were with Jessica the night before. They all said that Jessica left the party around 1:30 a.m. That was the last time they heard from her. Jessica's parents immediately suspected that something bad had happened to her. When her father went looking for her, he found Jessica's vehicle parked next to the freeway near the Lamarck exit, with her valuables still inside. Immediately, he called the police. While police conducted their own search, hundreds of volunteers joined in the search for the young girl. Through this journey, Jessica's parents met two people who had also experienced the loss of a daughter. It was Laura Smither's parents, Bob and Gay Smither.
The problem, and if the truck had been a problem, I really think Jessica would have sat in the truck and waited for us to come. I've thought about that already, and I don't think Jessica would have gotten out of the truck to walk.
They relied on them to help them get through the pain. As for the Smithers, they were going through the unbelievable trauma of reliving their own nightmare, all while standing firm in support of Jessica's parents and actively helping with the searches. Yet despite numerous search efforts from law enforcement and the community, no signs of Jessica ever surfaced. Police were already considering the possibility of foul play and believed that there was a very low chance of Jessica being found alive. The case went cold after weeks of looking for the teen, but the family never stopped searching for answers.
We're having to learn patience. That is a very, very hard lesson to learn, to be patient and wait, be still and wait on God.
On July 26, 1997, 19-year-old Tiffany Johnston's car was discovered abandoned in a car wash in Bethany, Oklahoma. There was no sign of her anywhere. Born on April 6, 1978, to Michael and Kathy Daubry, Tiffany Daubry was the youngest daughter. She was always very close with her family, especially with her mother.
And I was really close because everywhere I went, she was with me. Everyone said it was my shadow.
As a small-town girl, Tiffany was a very energetic, bubbly, and happy-go-lucky girl. She loved plants and often helped her grandfather with gardening. Tiffany graduated high school in 1996 and married Ryan Johnson in 1997. Shortly after the wedding, the couple moved to Bethany, Oklahoma. There, Tiffany took 2 jobs to save for her college tuition. She made plans to enroll herself in Oklahoma State University to study botany. But those plans would never see the light of day. Around 2 p.m. on July 26, 1997, Tiffany left work at the restaurant where she was working part-time in the anticipation of celebrating her 3rd-month anniversary with her husband. She returned to her house and freshened up before heading out in her white neon Dodge for an evening date with Ryan. She was due to meet her husband at 11 p.m. On her way there, Tiffany went to the Sunshine Car Wash to wash her car. She was never seen again. Later that night, her husband went to look for her. He didn't find any signs of her and did not find her at home either. Around midnight, a police officer from the Bethany Police Department noticed Tiffany's white neon Dodge abandoned at the car wash. The officer approached the car and saw the key was still in the ignition and the car door was open. Inside, the officer found her purse. In the glove box, he discovered a phone number that belonged to Tiffany's number, Kathy, who lived in Anadarko, 60 miles away from Bethany. But unfortunately, Kathy had no idea of her daughter's whereabouts. So investigators made their next call to Ryan, Tiffany's husband, who also had no idea where his wife was. It was evident then that there was something wrong. Before police could conduct a search for Tiffany, just 1 day after her disappearance, a horrific discovery was made. On July 27, 1997, around I-40 and Gregory Road, while searching for another missing girl, searchers found the dead body of a young Caucasian woman. When cops reached the scene, they were already speculating about the body belonging to Tiffany. When her pictures were shown to Ryan, he immediately identified it to be his wife. Except for a swimsuit, every piece of clothing had been stripped off of her body. Although autopsy results couldn't confirm the exact time of her death, it suggested that she'd been sexually assaulted and strangled to death. Unknown DNA that was found in her body was collected and preserved as evidence. Without any leads on a suspect, investigators focused their attention on the husband Ryan, thinking that he had something to do with his wife's death. However, pretty soon it was discovered that Tiffany was last seen at the car wash at 6 p.m. while Ryan was at his workplace from 3 p.m. to 11 p.m. But investigators soon received an unexpected tip.
We know that she was sexually assaulted. We know that she was received some trauma about her head and shoulder area.
The owner of the car wash called in saying that he'd seen a customer at his car wash on the same day Tiffany disappeared, who was on a news report a few months earlier for an abduction in Texas. The man was none other than William Reece. Oddly, Reece had a personal connection to Tiffany. Though he never met her face-to-face, Reece's mother was good friends with Tiffany's mother. Reece even called Kathy shortly after Tiffany's death and shared condolences for her untimely death. But once again, Reece would elude justice as police were unable to gather any clues to link him with Tiffany's murder, and the case went unsolved for quite some time. In 2015, investigators finally got a breakthrough in Tiffany Johnston's case. By then, DNA technology had advanced massively. A DNA swab that was taken from the state medical examiner's office during the autopsy of Tiffany was sent to the lab for DNA testing. The DNA profile got a hit in the CODIS database and implicated William Reece in the crime. In September of 2015, William Reece was charged in Oklahoma City with the 1997 kidnapping and murder of Tiffany Johnston. But just before his trial was set to begin, in an unexpected twist, he started confessing to other crimes in an attempt to cut a deal with the prosecution.
Reece, you have the right to remain silent, not make any statement at all.
He eluded the police, at least for 19 years.
William Reece had a criminal history, which included aggravated kidnapping.
And as shades of the truth.
I started choking her. She was still fighting me, and I grabbed that rope and wrapped it around her.
Already suspecting him in the murder of Laura Smither and the disappearances of Jessica Cain and Kelli Cox, detectives put a bunch of photos of the three victims before him. He immediately accepted responsibility, but continued to deny any sexual motive behind the crimes.
More leniency? Well, no, I really didn't expect to be convicted, really.
Are you saying then that the women who say that you attacked them are lying?
Yeah, I would say that. What about your victims in Oklahoma? I mean, you saw these people in Oklahoma, you were convicted. Anything to say to any of these people at all?
He also agreed to show investigators to the site where he claimed the remains of Kelli and Jessica were buried, on the condition that they would not seek the death penalty. In April of 2016, Reece led the investigators to a site in Houston Pasture where human remains were found after several days of digging. The remains were later confirmed by the Harris County Medical Examiner's offices as belonging to Jessica Cain. From there, the search moved to a burial site in Brazoria County where they found another set of human remains. Through dental records, the remains were positively identified as Kelli Cox. The trial for Tiffany Johnston's murder began in May of 2021 in the Oklahoma County District Court. On May 28, 2021, he was found guilty by the jury. On August 19, 2021, the judge sentenced him to death for Tiffany's abduction and murder. Following his conviction for murder in Oklahoma, Reece was extradited to stand trial in Texas in early March 2022 for the murders of Laura Smither, Kelli Cox, and Jessica Cain. He pleaded guilty to all three murders and was sentenced to life imprisonment in June 2022.
There's an old saying in the law, justice delayed is justice denied. Justice will not be delayed any longer in this case. I sentence you to death.
4 families waited for decades to get answers regarding the fate of their loved ones, while the person responsible for these crimes selfishly kept these secrets to himself. It's saddening to see that he would only give these poor families the answers they so desperately needed to suit his own personal needs. We can only hope that the families can finally begin the healing process and find comfort in being able to give their loved ones a proper burial after all these years.
They encountered the wrong guy in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Do you think that there could possibly be even more victims of William Reece? Let us know your thoughts on these tragic cases in the comment section. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more captivating true crime stories.